Hello and welcome. Today we're talking about towards racial democracy. So, for our objectives, is our society racist? This is a really hard thing to address. But then again, you have to look back on 400 years of history, including prejudice and discrimination against different races and ethnicities. And it is undeniable that throughout American society, racism and ethnocentrism has historically been a structure of American society. So has sexism, denying women access, heterosexism, having heteronormative value systems that deny access to people of different sexual orientations. Again, we also have hints of ageism, prejudice, and discrimination against people of different ages. And so across the board, you're going to find that status is associated with all of the isms. The groups you belong to are associated with whether or not you're able to rise up the social class historically. I mean, remember, were women allowed in the Constitution initially? No. It said liberty and justice for all, but what they were really saying was liberty and justice for all European descendants that are male. Because again, look at how the Constitution considered somebody that was from Africa. Like, they didn't think of them even as a whole person. Look at how Americans have treated Asians. They literally took the citizenship away from Asians. Asians weren't even allowed to be Americans. Look at modern day treatment of people that are, that identify as Islamic. In China, it's really sad. You have 2 million people interned, and it's like the world doesn't even care right now. What's going on with that? Now, I think we're starting to sanction China a little bit, but, I mean, seriously, there's like a mass genocide going on, and no one's, even caring. And why is that? How have Jewish people been historically treated in the United States? Again, we sent the Jewish people back to the Holocaust instead of just allowing them into our country. What are our attitudes toward Latinos right now? Why do we have such negative discriminatory immigration policies when you have a huge lack of workers and so much land in the United States? And again, all immigration does is increase the gross domestic product of America. It makes 0 sense to not let in immigrants. Plus, we have things like the Statue of Liberty. Give us your poor. Let's help them out. What happened to attitudes like that? So is our society racist? Well, racism still exists. I'm not going to say that every person in America is racist because, again, that's not the case. But as we have studied implicit bias, we're all kind of socialized into negative prejudices about groups of people, along with positive prejudices about groups of people. And again, you can ask yourself simple questions, like if you're a man, which is better, tall or short? Do you have kind of an answer for that? And if you do, that's the dark side of it all. Because again, these are negative prejudices that are based upon unfounded value systems that we socialize. And that's the dark, sad reality of, society at times. And that's why we have sociology, to point out a lot of these negative prejudice and discrimination so that we can create a better world, create social change to make things better. But the book very specifically says life chances are associated with race. Life chances meaning your access to rise up the social class ladder, access to good health care, access to education, access to good jobs, access to wealth, are still associated with race, even after we've had the equality movement and the equity movement of the civil rights movement. And again, life chances are still associated with your biological sex. Women still are more likely to be in poverty for various reasons, such as childbearing, being paid less, being discriminated against, not access. Sexual orientation continues to be a factor associated with life chances. Again, who makes the same amount of money? A white female, a gay white male, or a straight white male? And you're going to find that a white female and a gay straight male make, 20 cents less than a white male. And you have to ask the question, why is that? But then a black female makes only 63 cents to a white male's dollar, and a Latino female only makes 60 cents to a white man's dollar. And again, this is because of the association between race and life chances, in that society historically has oppressed people based upon their race, ethnicity, biological sex, gender, sexual orientation, religion, cultural values, all these other factors are associated with the isms in life chances in general. And again, that's why we talked about things like white male privilege, is because America was founded upon only white males having access. Not all white males have privilege because many are in poverty. More whites are in poverty than any non-whites, for example, but still, if you were a white male historically, you at least had a chance to rise up the social class ladder. And that's really tough because, you want to say that racism is gone, that sexism is gone, that we don't discriminate against women anymore. We don't discriminate against people based upon their religion and their race, but they do. Who gets the job, Daquan or John? John gets the call back 3 times to every Daquan. Who gets the job, John or Emily? Who gets promoted? John's going to get promoted 2 times over Emily. And that's, the sad truth about it. And then intersectionally, when these layers of isms compound, so for example, if you're a black female, you experience racism and sexism, whereas a white female only experiences sexism, and therefore that's associated with a white female having more life chances than a black female, because a white female doesn't experience racism, a white female only experiences sexism. So again, the overarching question is, how do we reduce all inequality in society? And then the tough answer is, we don't want to reduce all inequality. Look, we need some inequality just to motivate people. Again, why does a doctor get paid more than a server in a restaurant? And again, think about what it takes to actually become a doctor with skills and knowledge. Years of studying, years of work. So we do need, from a functionalist perspective, to incentivize people. But why is it that it's more likely someone becomes a doctor if their parents have higher socioeconomic status than someone whose parents don't have high of socioeconomic status? And so you're going to find that access to becoming a doctor, for example, is then associated with your parents' socioeconomic status, your race, and all these other factors that we're talking about. And so we don't want to rid all inequality, but we want to create a world of equity, that even children that are in poverty, for example, have the same chance, the same education as someone who's not in poverty, so that everyone has a chance to become an Albert Einstein or a Lydia Sebastian, the super geniuses of the world, for example, okay? And so how do we create a more equitable world that even if you grow up in not good socioeconomic status, you can still have the same chance to at least try to rise up the social class ladder? And right now, people, because of their race and their sex, their socioeconomic status, poverty levels, etc., sexual orientation, are still being denied access, being able to rise up and being able to contribute to society. And that's what's most sad. Because think what sexism does. That meant for thousands of years, half the planet didn't have a chance to contribute to the scientific achievements and technological advances. How much farther would we be if we simply let all the female brains weigh in on some stuff? A lot farther. What would happen if we allowed everyone that was not white to also have a chance to contribute? How much farther along, how much better of society could we be if we have more voices, more brains in on the subject, more people working together? Okay, and so how do we rid society of racial inequality? Since we're in race and ethnicity, we'll just answer this easily. There's 2 ways. Your book talks about all these other things that are involved, but here's the initial 2 ways. 1, no one's actually white, black, Asian, Hispanic, Latino, or Native American. All of us are super blended. When you do genetic testing, again, when we break into all of these factors, like, again, if you're white, your white next door neighbor has less genetically in common with you than someone in Africa. Look at the genetics. Again, we've talked about this so many times about why you're not white or black, but in the words of Morgan Freeman, you stop calling me black and I'll stop calling you white. Stop thinking of yourself as white or black. It's really hard because it's so much a part of our identities and involved in our culture and involved in our social interaction. It affects who people we marry and affects the people we're friends with. But that's the point. It shouldn't affect it. Only 10% of marriages for whites and blacks are interracial. Why is that? And it's because of attitudes toward race, and that's affecting the way we interact with each other. If you stop thinking of yourself as white or black, then whoever you're around, you never think of yourself as different. You just think of yourself as a person like everybody else. So a really easy way to end racism is stop calling yourself white or black. Stop teaching your kids that they're white or black. Teach them actual colors for skin color that have nothing to do with race. Because that's what the magazines do. There's a bunch of words. But why do children not get socialized, think about it, into words for skin color? Right? So, because all that matters is you're white or black, right? That's America. And that's the problem. You need to socialize your kids that there's no such thing as white or black. That's all crap. Actually, your skin color is sienna. Things like that, okay? Peach, whatever you want to use, because we need to teach more words. My wife is from Albania, and they always call themselves olive-colored. So they're olive-colored. The book talks about 3 approaches to ending racial inequality. Color blindness, which is, again, denying this concept that people have colors, denying that racism exists, where we're at now with that. Multiculturalism, otherwise known as cosmopolitanism, embracing all cultures. And then racial democracy, which is racial justice, balancing the equation so everybody has equity, but sticking with your races and ethnicities. Levels to pursue racial democracy. You can do that on an individual level, which we're doing right now. Some person in this class is telling you you're not actually white or black. Start thinking about it. Start studying what I'm saying. I had to study this. I always thought it was white until I read a book. And then I was like, interactional, the way that we interact with other people, group interaction, our marriage and friends and our coworkers and the workforce and all of those factors. On the institutional level, getting at the policies and procedures, the legalities of racism, the racial quotas and affirmative action and things along those lines. And then on a collective level, which is all people getting together to change the world by protests, activism, just talking, writing books, pen being mightier than the sword, etc. So again, the goals. The book talks about color blindness. And this is the idea that just deny that color exists. Right? No one's actually white or black. But this didn't work out very well for society when they pushed color blindness, because people are still socializing people that they're white or black. Therefore, that is associated with our hiring rates and our marriage rates and all these other factors. So no matter how much you want to deny that race and racism exist, people are continuously culturally reproducing this, perpetuating race and racism from generation to generation by continuously socializing your children that you're different from somebody else. And that's, again, not how genetics works, but people are keeping up with it. And so, again, color blindness, this attitude of just denying race and racism and saying that racism is over, that doesn't exist anymore, it has not worked out well. Again, we need to point it out that it still exists, and if people truly embrace the idea that they're not actually white or black, it'll continue to perpetuate. Again, multiculturalism is this idea of embracing all races and ethnicities, embracing all unique identities, and then valuing all differences and diversities. And that's great. Multiculturalism is a fantastic attitude. But think about it. America is a very multicultural place. But is it really a melting pot? Do cultures actually blend? Or is it super segregated? Then the only reason that all cultures haven't just blended into American cultures is because of that unique segregation. That you still have the Italian neighborhoods, the Polish neighborhoods, you still have the Jewish neighborhoods, you still have the black neighborhoods and the white neighborhoods, and Asian neighborhoods, and then your ethnicity and your race is then associated with who you marry and who you're friends with and who you go to school with. And you still see segregation in the schools. Like black people, for example, 90% of people that are black go to schools that are like nearly 90% black. So you got to ask some questions about that. Is America truly a melting pot? Or does segregation still exist continuously to this day? And then again, racial democracy is this idea of promoting social justice. It's the idea of looking at institutional discrimination and saying, yes, it does exist. That people named Daquan do not get hired as much as people named John. And they don't get the callback for the interview. And we do studies on this all the time. Every 10 years, we do the same study. We do a bunch of names, we send them out as sociologists, and then we wait for the callbacks, and then we do our frequencies and our statistics to demonstrate that even though civil rights has happened and that we're supposedly colorblind in modern times and embracing multiculturalism, we still at the same rate discriminate against people based upon their name. So again, racism still exists. It's still a part of the system. Look at the politicians. What race are they? What gender and sex are they? Look at the heads of the companies. What race and sex are they, etc. Look at the really good schools. How is their diversity? Questions to ask. So again, how to bring about change. Racial democracy. Again, leveling the playing field, giving everybody a chance to have an equitable opportunity to rise up the social class ladder. Again, can racism be ended? I'm saying absolutely. Sexism is a little bit harder to end because there are some more questions there, which we're not going to get into today. But again, are there biological differences? How is that associated with, blah, 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 blah. It's a little bit harder than race because you can prove that, white and black people aren't actually different in the ways we think they are. But when it comes to males and females and intersex, are there subtle differences? And then how are those associated with behavior and all kinds of other factors? And sexism is so much more ingrained into our society than racism. And then also ingrained into that is classism, the inequality between the social classes. And then how is all this associated with race? And again, remember, we created races so that we could have a very clear-cut lower class workforce. And so again, in order for racial democracy to end, that means you have to stop subjugating people into lower classes. Give them a chance to get out based upon their own merit, upon their own skills and talents and things along those lines. So can society be changed? Absolutely. A, stop calling yourself white or black, or B, change the meanings attached to race. Okay, those are the two easy ways to end racism. To stop thinking of yourself as white, black, Asian, etc. You want to hold on to your ethnicities as Irish or African or Chinese or whatever, okay. But again, the idea that we're racially different has been debunked. But you can also just change the meanings attached to race and change the meanings attached to difference, the negative prejudice, and then the discriminatory actions we take based upon that prejudice attached to concepts of difference. We can do this at an individual level, changing, again, hearts and minds, one person at a time. At an interactional level, how we interact with groups. Institutional level, ending institutional discrimination. And as a collective level, all of us getting together to create social change. So again, the book says, "We who believe in freedom," is how it wraps up this book. What would a racially democratic society actually look like to you? Think about it. Imagine a world in which everybody had an equitable chance to compete based upon their own merit. Not just based upon your race or your ethnicity or your parents' socioeconomic status. How would your life be different? How would society itself be different? And so again, list ways that you can work for racial justice in yourself. Think about it. How can you yourself have diverse attitudes, changing your ways of thinking to end racism and ethnocentrism? How can you, in the way you interact with your inner circle and who your inner circle consists of, be associated with change? The institutions you belong to, the churches and the governments and the workforce and the other groups you belong to. And then again, your nation. What would America look like if the world was a little bit more equitable? And so this is how the book concludes. It really says, look, imagine a world where racism didn't exist. And how do we get there? And again, the two ways to get there are stop calling yourself by a race, stop identifying as a race, or at least change the meanings attached to those race and deconstruct the negative prejudicial attitudes. So, things to be thinking about. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.